So I'm just kind of assessing where the overall tightness is in the neck and specific areas that are tighter and if there's any paniculoses, and starting to warm things up. Visual cue of where the shoulders are as far as elevation and comparing one to the other in the rotation. How much space there is between the shoulders and the back of the table, and this shoulder actually seems higher this way.
This way?
Medially
This way.
rotated, yep, just like that. But just as her neck is always tight in, that her left side is usually worse. And today we're just going to focus on the traps, the vader scapula and the SCM. But I need to warm up the area first. I'm very careful with people's necks. I don't do a lot of range of motion. I don't move people's necks around a lot unless I am stretching their neck on purpose or moving into a particular position. But a lot of people kind of hold and guard their head and neck, so I don't tend to do like a lot of swooping figure eights or range of motion kind of things. Just very, very supportively, if I'm going to move the neck, make sure that I'm under the occiput and don't do any fumbling movements. Once you start fumbling around or bumping around somebody's head with random movements, they will consciously or not consciously not really trust you anymore. Because we balance our heavy bowling ball head on top of our broom of a spine, we tend to protect our head. So if somebody starts moving us around like a bobblehead, we'll oftentimes kind of guard against that. So only deliberate movements on the head and neck. I now found a nice tight spot in the upper traps, and I'm getting it compressing in towards the lateral TVPs, and I'm pulling into the tissue and then taking it down towards her inferiorly. So kind of like a J stroke, but actually grasping the tissue. And so I'm pulling it away from the occiput. I guess I'm in an area that it would have been nice to get our glass tabletop out. And since we're not using this, it's just in your way, huh?
Oh, I didn't know it was there.
Oh, there's some people sitting over there that
Oh, you can't see?
maybe be able to see something.
There you go. I do.
You want it somewhere else?
No, it's all right.
That's
fine. Thank you.
I don't want this to get wet.
Thank you. Do some general scooping out
sorry.
of the suboccipital area. I'm going to pull the fascia away from the occiput. This tends to feel really good.
It does.
And you can definitely squeeze the tissue as you scoop it out. So scoop and pull, scoop and pull. And if you feel any little crunchy paniculoses, then of course that is an indication there's a trigger point in your neighborhood and you can check it out. I'm going to take right next to the spine and start scooping it out this way to warm it up in the lamina groove. Got one hand going inferiorly and one hand going superiorly. I could also have them go up together at the same time. And then of course the traps are actually relatively, they're quite thin, superficial layer. So as you start to work through the layers of the tissue, you're actually going to be in the deeper layers of the neck. We'll warm things up enough here. Now I'm going to travel down to the traps where they attached to the spine of the scapula, chromium process. And then right there at the superior angle of the scapula, where elevator scapula attaches. Of course, you can always use your entire hand like a sensor, making contact with every part of your hand so that you can sense. There's quite a bit of tension, so if I try to move her shoulder this way, I can feel a lot of fascia holding it this way. I could go straight into an MFR stretch with that, or I could just make note of it and come back to that later.
So right now you're pushing it towards the table?
I'm taking it
Or
in
just hold it?
that way.
All right.
So I can use her humerus, her clavicle, and the spine of her scapula as handles for the fascial stretch. And the intensity, Christy?
Let's give it 7.
And all of a sudden, at first I felt like a resistance, and then all of a sudden I felt like a big whoosh. Not even really a hot one, just kind of a whoosh that it melted. So now I'm pressing more in this angle inferiorly, pretty much the same angle as her arm. And my thumb is on top of her traps. I could actually treat a trigger point at the same time if I want. So GB21 in the middle of the top of the traps. As I roll anteriorly and posteriorly, I can feel a tight fiber going this way. So I can get right on top of it, pressing down towards her feet, and then doing the MFR at the same time. If I want to be sure that I'm right on top of the trigger point, I can check in with the client if they feel any referral pain. And
It's just achy right there when you push on it.
And is it
It's kind of going down my arm too, a little bit.
okay? And what does the sensation down your arm feel like?
Kind of tingly. Like a little like my hands trying to go to sleep.
So I'm going to move and flush out the tissue just in case it's nervy and not trigger pointy. Anytime the hand starts to go numb, tingly. Of course, we're super close to the brachial plexus, which comes out of the in between the TVPs and then out in this area. And the traps, there's a border right here. So right in front of the traps is especially vulnerable for nerves. And so when you're on that border, you want to be careful that if it might be nerve sensation just to move. If it's hard not to isolate that, then you might want to stick to a pincer grasp. Like with SCM, sternocleidomastoid, you can create a shelf with your finger and then pincer grasp in the front. That way you can isolate and roll through the tissue.
If you hit the brachial plexus, can I do permanent damage?
If you really intensely kept wailing on it, you could actually damage the nerves, but if you press on it and they report some kind of a sensation that sounds like numbness, tingling, some kind of thing that sounds nervy, and then you move off of it, it's very unlikely that you would injure it in such a short period of time. But if you really thrash on it, you could injure it. It gets all bound up in the fascia, just like everything else. So these fragile little nerve fibers are in these tight webs of fascia. So they can get really tugged on and compressed. They're kind of like fragile telephone wires. Ooh, there's something there. Does that refer anywhere?
It's not really going anywhere else. It just hurts. I mean, it just feels, now it kind of released. Or maybe you let up a little.
A really nice other trap one is that triangle between the clavicle, acromion, and spine of the scapula, and the soft tissue right at the lateral end of that triangle is a lovely place that usually has a, this is also an acupressure point, and it's also a trigger point. So I'm going to press into the fascia, make sure that I'm not on the bone. And one way that you can do this, since it's so close to bones, is press into the fascia and then medially pull the fascia rather than just pressing straight down into it. So if I kind of grab hold of the fascia, and then I can basically pull the fascia. And that'll often drag right into the tissue that connects to the periosteum. And a lot of times where muscles attach into the periosteum is a tender area. So sometimes I'll feel the tenderness just from that as well. And then explore in little different teeny micro directions, because I can feel that there's a lump of tightness here. But to really precisely isolate the trigger point, I want to grab it right on top of the trigger point in the right angle. And can you let me know if you feel this, a sensation anywhere ever than right where I'm pressing?
It's just really tender where you're pressing, but it feels like it's kind of going down, straight down from there too.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, F7's perfect pressure. 10's just
7.5.
And
And
now,
that's okay. I mean, it feels like it goes 7.5 or something.
and then how's the sensation now?
It's backing up.
Can you let me know when it gets down to a 3 or less, and when you don't feel the referral pain? And I can feel a lot of whooshing, melting under my fingers. It's dissipating and softening. The tight area is getting smaller, it's going away. No longer feels like a hill. And I'm sinking deeper and deeper into that track. And how's the sensation?
I'd say you're probably at a 3 in comparison to what it was.
So I could hang out and wait to see if we get to a 0, or I could call that good. But I felt like it melted quite a lot, so we'll call that good. Talk to you, right? And we want to heat the area, and we want to stretch the area. We could do different stretches, but one we can do is a muscle energy technique. So Christy, I want you to use only about 20% of your strength and only the muscles right here, and push your shoulders up towards your ears. And keep pushing them up gently, only those muscles, and keep breathing. And I'm resisting her so that we're not moving anywhere. And I'm just going to hold her to slightly fatigue her muscles, but it does not help to have the clients having a wrestling match with you. So they don't need to use 50, 70, 100% of their strength or engage a bunch of different muscles. Just engage those muscles gently. And then I want you to totally let go of those muscles. Take a deep breath out and let them go. And as she lets go, I press down towards her knees. Make sure she goes through a breath cycle, breathing in, breathing out. You can take nice, long, deep, loud breaths yourself. And then we're going to ease off. You can just check things out proprioceptively. Give a little message here. How's the movement of the shoulder? Then I'm going to get a nice supportive on her shoulders, on her chest, clavicles, traps. If she seemed to do a good job of just using traps in only 20% of your strength, the second and third times we can do this, we can give shorter directions. If she seemed like she was trying to have a wrestling match with me and prove how strong she is, then I can clarify my directions that she doesn't need to use a lot of her strength. And I can say things like, okay, let's just use like half of that strength, or let's just use 10% of that strength, and make sure you only use these muscles and keep breathing. So, with just a little bit of your strength, Christy, go ahead and press your shoulders up towards your ears into my hands. And see, I don't let her get anywhere. I want to resist her as soon as she pushes up, so that I have to be in a position where I'm ready to resist her. And go through a couple breath cycles. You want to slightly fatigue the traps. And then on her next breath out, I'm going to have you totally let go of all of the strength and resistance in your traps and let your shoulders drop. And breathe out and let them go. Now I can take the traps and push them down, and her shoulders are rotating medially. So as I'm pushing down, I can also teach them how to go backwards. And then I can also, like a cat finding the comfortable position. Oh my goodness, they feel so much more soft and so much more movable. Do they look more movable? Mm-hmm. Normally I would look more there. Oh yeah, that looks good. But I'm keeping my head to the side as well.
On this side.
Oh wow, check that out. Yay. When you do this, you want to always make sure you give messages with the way that you're talking and the way that you're moving them, that they can feel all the positive change and sort of enjoy it and savor in it, revel it, feel good in their bodies, so that you're not just constantly going from one, oh, that feels messed up kind of feeling, to, oh, that feels messed up. Oh, you found my headache spot. Oh, you found my tension spot. Give them those physical cues. They can enjoy how the improvement's going. Now, I usually do this 2 to 3 times. Every time you do it, it'll get better. So we'll do it one more time. And now, if I wasn't talking you through directions in the lab, this would only take about like half the time or less than half of the time of the way we're talking through it slowly. Okay, so Christy, one more time, just a little teeny bit of your strength. And press up into your ears. And keep holding it. Pressing up with just your traps. You can give them cues by like tapping on it. Just this muscle right here. Press up about 10% of your strength. And you resist them. You don't let them go anywhere. And when she's ready to take a nice deep exhale on your next breath out, let all of your muscle tension go. And let your traps go down. There you go. Beautiful. Nice job. Nice soft traps. Your shoulders are moving nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular muscle energy technique with the elevation and depression focuses really on those elevating and depressing muscles, levator and traps. But even though those are the primary muscles I'm releasing as I do the cat paw and moving, I can also rotate out. To talk to the real bigger functional patterns, since we're not dealing with isolated muscle movements, but we're dealing with actual movements that people do in real life. So I can pull out, because there's a big part of the pattern right here. And then last but not least, and don't forget this because it's not just a theoretical thing here, last but not least we want heat. So it's been sitting around a lot, so I can remove some of the layers so she gets some nice heat from it. And
Under my head.
you can help raise them up. And go ahead and rest. Is that comfy or weird to only have one side?
That's okay.
Okay. So while I have her just kind of on one side with heat, I can do supportive movements with my other hand to hold her up. Sorry, camera crew, I'm actually going to work on the right side.
Okay, that's special.
Does that feel too jacked up for that position with the heat?
No, it's all right.
All right, so I'm basically going to assess and treat the rest of the muscle and area. There's something really nice in here. Does that go just where I'm pressing, or do you feel it
Oh
anywhere?
no, that feels really good. I mean, it just feels really tense.
And 1 to 10, if 7's perfect pressure, where's the pressure at?
6.5, you can go a little deeper.
And how's that?
That's good.
And I'm just having a dialogue with the muscle. So much, much more than doing something to the muscle, I want to listen to the muscle. If I make any assumptions ahead of time of what should be going on here, I will usually miss the message of what actually needs to be going on here. And I grab the tissue, I'm taking it up towards the occiput. Using good triangle support of my feet, sitting on my sits bones, and breathing. If I slouch and don't have my feet flat on the floor, it can be very hard to facilitate releases. And I can lean back with my whole body to traction her neck. Almost everybody loves tractioning, where you basically lengthen their spine by leaning backwards. So I'm sinking into her occiput, and I'm gently leaning back with my body weight. My favorite. Okay, now I'm going to rotate her head with my left hand supported on her occiput so she gets the physical message, and I can give her the verbal message too. I have the weight of your head, Christy. You don't have to help me. And I'm going to just wrap this around. Remember, these hot packs are quite flexible, and it feels really good to wrap around structures. How's that? Good. And this, of course, is going to warm up the SCM as well. So there's a very tight muscle band in the lamina groove region, and I'm going to press into the tissue and pull it inferiorly. And I think I'll give her just a minute of the heat, and then we'll get the hot pack out of the way just because of the demonstration so you can see what I'm doing. But in real practice, I could work with this hot pack here and get to all kind of structures in the neck while this is having its effect. So we're only going to move it prematurely for the video and demo, but really I could do all kinds of work in the neck while this is continuing to warm up the trapezius area that we released. So, sorry Christy, I'm going to move the hot pack. You want it on your tummy or anywhere special?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Just put it there.
Okay, so So one stretch that if they have not been in a car accident or have a stressed out neck that you can do is to get behind their occiput, and you can do crisscross hands or straight hands, kind of depends on your hand size and how tall you are. So basically we're gonna flex her neck, but we want to make sure to not jam it and shorten it this way. So when I lift and flex her neck, I want to kind of give it a pulling out lifting. However this works for my own body mechanics, where I am 100%, every time I take her head off of the table, I am 100% stabilized. So like if you're hiking and your friend is about to slip down a path and you offer them a hand, what do you do to make sure you're ready? You make sure you're stable enough before you help them. So you don't start fumbling around with somebody's head unless you are actually stable. So I get behind her head. Now I could crisscross my arms, or if I don't feel like that's going to work, I could just have one hand lower on the neck and one hand on the occiput. I'm going to take my stronger hand on her occiput and my other hand at the base of her spine. Okay, Chrissy, I'm going to lift up your neck and let me know if it's not comfortable, and I've got the weight of your head so you can just let go. Okay. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pulling in a traction direction and up. And my left hand is also pulling up. So we're stretching her whole spine. And how does that feel, Christy? What's up?
Really good.
Okay. Do you want me to go farther, or does this feel perfect?
You go farther.
I want to make sure I keep going in a traction direction and not crunching her spine. And would you like more, or is this perfect?
That's good.
Stable all the time. And when I'm ready to bring her back down to the table, I need to do that in a controlled manner. She should never feel like she has to help me. I mean, she may personally feel like she has to help no matter what someone's doing, but I should not give her cues that I need help. So I'm in control, holding the weight of her head, bringing it back down. Wow, that helped a lot.
Felt really good.
Holy cow, does anybody remember where this shoulder started?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That shoulder's happier. Alright, so let's try to do this quickly. Levator scapula, traps, skinny, on top. You can even see the front line of her traps. We want to go in front of the traps, but make sure we angle posteriorly to the superior angle of the scapula and not in the nerves right here. And she even had a spot right on the border that felt nervy, so we keep a mental note of that. So what we can do to help isolate the superior angle of the scapula is actually use the other hand under the scapula and move the scapula around, and then we can angle around the traps. Make sure you go in a posterior direction so that you're not pressing in the brachial plexus area. And we want to actually find the superior angle of the scapula. And if you move around the scapula, that'll help isolate it. You can jostle it. You'll feel the big ropey muscles. Sorry, too much?
That's all right. No, it's just a little tender right there.
And now remember, the levator scapula has a very localized trigger point on most people, the referral pattern. So they're oftentimes not going to feel it go shooting, and if they do feel it go shooting, you might be on a nerve. And the nerve tends to be anterior to that superior angle of the spine, of the scapula. So I think we were on the trigger point, but since it's a localized pattern, you know, she's just going to feel it achy in the area, most likely. And now that it's released some, we can get right on top of the angle of the scapula. You can even move their arm if you need to. And I'm getting the muscle softened so I can reach in front of it. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to get right on the bone. Make sure I press back. Careful pressing in the triangle. And you can totally change your angle as well. Like if you need to move her arm or you need to be positioned down here. There, that seems to put her traps in an easier position. Oh, there we go. Aha. Bingo. So now I'm much more isolated on the tight band of the levator. As I release it, I'll be able to follow it all the way up to the TVPs of C1, C2, C3, C4, instead of just being in a general tension of muscle in this neighborhood. And I can use her arm as leverage to get her bone and muscle exactly where I need it. Support the arm in a way that they can let go of their weight. The arm is a ball and socket joint, or the glenohumeral joint is, and it likes circular movement, so rather than moving them in straight lines, you can take their body, their arm, in circles around their body, and get right behind traps. And how's the pressure?
That's good. 7.
And then when you're on a good spot, let it melt. Nice thing when you're actually moving their arm around a lot when you work is that, again, these muscles are not just like slabs of meat that you are releasing randomly because they're tight. You're actually releasing them so that the person has smoother, easier, fuller range of motion. So we're actually dealing with functional improvement and not just like softening slabs of meat. So if I'm like moving around her arm and I feel where things are tight and what actually helps the movement and what's kind of jacked up, like there's a spot right here that's sticky. So as I move like this, it's fluid. Maybe you can see it, I don't know. Christine will probably feel when I get to here that it's jacked up. So smooth arc and then stuck. So if I hang out in this stuck spot, we can get rid of the stuck spot and make a bigger, smoother arc for her. So support her arm in a way that she can let go of the weight of it. And then move around. And you can also add pressure into the areas that are tight. So if I want to take her arm and actually wiggle in or press into the tight spots. It's okay if she's touching herself, moving her hand around. It can actually be comforting. It's kind of like you're like making them hug themselves. Sometimes massage therapists make the mistake of feeling like they have to have their clients like only prone or only supine and like totally not really moving around at all. Like that just because they're relaxed you're going to disturb them by moving their arms around and stuff. Is that comfortable?
It's okay. I mean, nothing hurts.
So functionally, we want to lengthen this. The shoulder gets jacked up, we want to pull it down. Circular movement. Now make sure the linen stays up when you come down. So I grabbed it. Whoa. You can do this as a stretch, like a passive stretch, or you can do it as MFR. The main difference is how steady you add your pulling. So I can do a pulling force that is actually pulling inside the fascia and hold it steady enough that the fascia unwinds. I want to pull, make sure I'm not like just holding her wrist in a way that feels constrictive or actually dislocates the little tiny bones of her wrist. So what I'm doing basically is grabbing a bigger part of her forearm, and you can let them rest on you, kind of depending on the size of their arm and your arm, where they're going to land. Feel the fascial patterns. Step back, sit back, and twist open. Too much on your elbow?
It's okay.
And then when you have that levator scapula, I think we should come back to this again another day just because of time. Wow, that's amazing. I bet you can see the difference. Check that out. That was not at all what her trap was doing before. Or what her position was at all. But once you're able to actually isolate, oh my gosh, check that out. See, you can't really isolate it like that at first. Now there's a very clear rope instead of a big gnarly mess. If I have this rope isolated, I can follow it all the way up. Let's just do that for a minute and then maybe we'll come back to SCM another day just because of time. If the spot feels especially tender, feel free to let me know, Chrissy. And I'm on a very, very tight band, by the way. And I'm going to grab that tight band and take it on an MFR stretch. Very, very, very tight spot. Got to slow down. 1 to 10 if 7's perfect versus that.
It's 7.
Okay.
It's good.
I've got my hand under her medial border of her scapula and on her whole scapula, so I can use that to assist. And I'm just going to wait and listen as I pull the tissue in MFR. You can see dramatic changes in her breathing pattern. And a big band of the tissue let go. And so I'm going to follow it up. This is where you can really isolate it and not get straying out on the other muscles in the area that are unhappy. Because on like 95% of your clients, there's going to be a lot of muscles in the neighborhood that are unhappy. And yes, it's nice to release all of them, but there's something very special about following levator all the way from the superior angle up to the PVPs without just randomly mushing on muscles in the area that can release it in a very profound way. Now, if you feel any numbness, tingling, or sensations in your hands or arms, can you let me know? Because now as I get up to the TVPs, there's going to be brachial plexus exiting between the intervertebral frame, and so I want to grab the tissue superficially enough to drag it. It's probably you can't see, but there's a very tight band right there. If I use flat enough fingers, I can stay on top of it and grab it instead of just poking into the side of her neck. And I'm on the continental divide of her TVPs, but I want to pull the tissue and very much with flat fingers, pull the tissue and not just jab into the side of her neck. Twitch response?
Yeah, I noticed it a couple of times a little bit.
And this feels pretty intense to me. How's a 1 to 10?
It's 7. You're good.
Getting a hot flash. And a time to speed up, and now a time to slow down. May all look equally slow, but there's different micro speeds as the fascia unwinds. There's a little gnarly spot in it. So I'm going to hang out with the gnarly spot, grab the tissue, see which way it wants to go. I'm right on the TVPs. And at any time, I can pull her scapula down, and that's going to increase the stretch. And the intensity.
7. That's good. Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. And then I could end by rotating her neck if it's comfortable in this position to facilitate the stretch. Is that comfortable?
That's good.